It wasn't just TJ Watt. Do not allow yourself to think that it was just TJ. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. From Atlanta, I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of the other two teams in town that I cover, the Penguins and the Pirates. Steelers 18, Falcons 10. Belabor the lack of offensive touchdowns if you want. Belabor that it took 6, count them 6, Chris Boswell field goals and a punt, by the way, to compensate for that. Belabor a slow start on both sides of the ball, but then breathe, exhale, let it all out. Because the headline from this particular show was that this defense, again, not just TJ, could, in fact, as I've been speculating for months now, become something truly special. No, we did not see it in the first half. Not that they were terrible or anything, and not like the Falcons ran wild, but there were some sustained drives. There was some getting shoved around a little bit. There were some missed assignments. But I want you to go through this with me. When these teams came out for the second half, whether you were one of the tens of thousands of fans, Steelers fans, inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, or you were watching or streaming the game from afar, how did you feel after the Falcons' very first series after halftime? I know, right? Me too. I shared this with a handful of the defensive guys in the locker room afterward, that it felt to me like once they came out and had set themselves and had really cemented the front, including shutting down Bijan Robinson, including shoring up whatever was happening to the right side of the Steelers' front, and I won't have an opportunity to watch the film until later today, it was over. It was done. I asked Keanu Benton about this. Came into the second half. I mean, you could just tell right away you guys just weren't going to give up a thing.
Yeah, it's just actually seeing the ones get to play. Preseason, those guys really didn't play too much. So first half was just kind of getting to feel what they were going to do, and then second half come out and execute what we seen. So
that actually makes more sense than anything, because it didn't look like it was schematically anything different.
Not really. It's just kind of we were expecting certain things, and it was just kind of play ball first half. Second half, we kind of knew the flow of the game, knew what they wanted to get done, and had to stop them from doing so.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. You know, our DBs did a good job today. We did a good job putting some pressure in his lap and getting after it.
I also asked TJ. I asked Cam Hayward. I asked my man Montravius Adams, who in fact reasserted himself as my man with a big sack of his own. No pun intended, but you know. I asked Micah Fitzpatrick. I asked Dante Jackson. I asked DeMonte Casey. I asked Joey Porter Jr. I asked Peyton Wilson. I asked Landon Roberts. And everything that came back almost identical with these responses. And they did sound a lot like the one that you just heard from Keanu. The ones, as you heard the kids say, refers, of course, to the first teamers, the stars, the guys who get held out of preseason games. I had mentioned to you on this past Friday's episode that was a concern for me, that these guys hadn't been seen together in anger. There's no way to manufacture game conditions in practices. So they all kind of had to get used to each other. They all had to kind of, all right, yeah, no, it's just like practice. Let's do it like that. There were very few, or as other players described it, pretty much no schematic adjustments. They just got it together. And when they got it together, all of this happened. 51 total yards were allowed to the Falcons in the second half. 3 first downs, one of them by penalty. And of course, 0 points, which allowed the Steelers' offense enough time and good enough field position that they could keep putting Boz into a spot where he could keep putting up all the points. Listen to this. These were the Falcons' drives in the second half in order. This was how they ended. Fumble, punt, 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 interception by Jackson, and of course the end of the game, which magnificently ended on a TJ sack. It was a walk-off sack, to borrow the baseball term. That, my friends, is as good as it gets. You can talk to me all day about how the Falcons are the Falcons and Kirk Cousins is this or that or whatever, but the fact is, a big portion of this summer in this city, here in Georgia, has been invested in pumping up the Falcons as a playoff team, as a legit playoff team. And part of that, a big part of that, is because of the massive upgrades that they apparently made on offense. So no, that's no walkover opponent. Not anymore. And even if they were, to dominate another NFL team to that extreme, that's some pretty heartening stuff. It really is. And we've got a ton of different things to talk about, obviously, in the early part of this week as it relates to that game and all three phases of the team. But the one thing that I'll say for the offense right now is that Justin Fields and everyone else took care of the football, that Fields and Najee Harris made the running game function without Jaylen Warren, who told DK Pittsburgh Sports afterward that he knew he'd be limited going into this one because of recovering from the hamstring, who didn't have any other wide receivers and who didn't even try to use any other wide receivers besides George Pickens, and who knew they'd have the middle of the field taken away by Atlanta's world-class safeties. That was a deliberate decision, Pat Freiermuth told me, by Arthur Smith. They just worked around it. In Muth's case, he worked around it literally. 4 catches on 4 targets, all of them outside the hashes. And by holding the football, by maintaining possession to an almost 35-25 ratio, the offense, as TJ himself would point out to me, allowed the Steelers' defense to stay fresh on the sideline and go out there and perform at their peak. Good stuff. Don't be fishing for the negatives in this one. Not when the defense is putting out like that. When we come back, J1Q. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q comes from Jim, who says, DK, Justin Fields is a threat to run. He can move around all over the place and create plays from all over the place. I don't care about the style points of this victory. I care about having few 3-and-outs and winning. If the defense gets its rest the way they did in this one, this team's pretty good. So isn't Fields a perfect fit for this offense? Jim, Fields can be a perfect fit for this offense. I don't know that it'd be for the reason that you cite, though. You just heard me in the opening segment give credit to the offense for allowing the defense to get refreshed. There were times, actually, and DeMonte Casey was joking with me about this. He said, you don't want to stay there on the sideline that long either. So maybe they don't have to be that good. But yeah, there was 270 yards of offense, which is bizarre to not produce a touchdown. 7 trips inside the Atlanta 40, twice inside the Atlanta 10, and that's a lot of offensive movement. That's a lot of plays being made. And while I can appreciate there's going to be a week-long frustration expressed about not getting into the end zone, it's a lot like loading the bases up in each of the 9 innings and not scoring any runs. The fact of the matter is, if your baseball team's good enough to load the bases regularly, you're going to score a ton of runs over the course of a long summer. So where Fields goes specifically, I've got a couple of things to say. One, I admire the overall performance. He was 17 of 23 for 156 yards, had not 2, but if you think about it, 3 deep balls completed to George Pickens, if you count the one that really drew a ticky. It was such a bad flag, I can't even say ticky-tack. But there should have been 3 bombs to George rather than the 2. Fields ran for an additional 54 yards and, no turnovers, despite that really kind of jittery start with that bad snap on the very first play. 2, and this is going to be one of those things that I really appreciate that much more when I go over the film, and that'll be Fields' quality on a couple of those throws. He makes the deep pass, including throwing against his body, look so effortless that you forget how hard it just looked for the better part of 3 full seasons here. 3, and don't underplay this one, please, in your mind. He has carried himself with immaculate class from day one of his arrival in Pittsburgh, being respectful toward Wilson, being respectful toward the Steelers as an institution, being respectful toward their decisions. And when he was asked after this game how he feels about whether or not he should be the starter next week in Denver, his response was, and I'm going to read this to you verbatim, "I came here to win. No matter if I was going to throw for 300 yards, 100 yards, no yards, I came here to win. That's the only focus I have." That's, some people can just say stuff like that. But when I saw Fields sitting in the corner of the locker room by himself, the last one to take his uniform off in the room, he's sitting there in full uniform, full pads. Everything was still on except for his helmet. Just still staring straight ahead as if he's getting ready for the next snap, as if the game hadn't ended yet, as if he wanted to go back out there for more. That's an intangible. That's a real intangible. I do expect Wilson will start in Denver, provided his calf can handle it. But I also do stand by my stance that I expressed to you going into this game, which is that I want to see Fields. I want to see more of this. I want to see someone who's 25 years old continue to progress as he apparently has under the Steelers and since leaving the quarterback graveyard they called Chicago. I'm not about to make some big case out of it in the coming week. I'm not going to try to stir up this or that. I've made my position known on this. And this game, this win, this smooth, solid, with still ample room to get better, showing to me is, that's good. That's good. That's what you want if you're the Steelers, I would think, right? I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Steelers, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say hello to whoever the kind young lady was who stopped me as I was heading into Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and she was like, DK, I listen to your show every day, and I didn't get her name, and I'm so rotten for not having done that, but you say you listen to it every day, so here I'm saying hi to you, and we'll do this again tomorrow.